Hello everyone. I've just come back from my daily walk, 25 kilograms around the local neighbourhood. Absolutely gale force winds going on, which made it probably one of the hardest walks that I've ever been on. But the good news is that I am making some progress in the weight loss. Since last Saturday, my weight has dropped a total of 2 kilograms, so I'm well on track to the first goal, which is under 75 by next Tuesday. Now, one of the more pressing concerns I find in recent years is that there is too much information out there. Now, that sounds kind of self-contradicting, that surely more information is better than less, but the problem is that human brains are not very good at handling huge amounts of information. When you think about it, there's 35 billion people on the planet. They all have their own thoughts and their own opinions and their own ideas. And so in order to get any kind of understanding of what's going on in the world, you have to take an awful lot of cognitive shortcuts because there are just too many individual factors at play to get a meaningful picture. It's kind of like if you had a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle with no picture on the box, but you only had 10 pieces. And only 3 of those were actually from that jigsaw. The rest were from other jigsaw puzzles. And you don't know which ones they are. So from these pieces, you have to try to work out which pieces are actually from the puzzle and which ones aren't, and then try to work out what the remaining picture looks like when it's all put together, with nothing to refer to. The picture is going to be wildly inaccurate at best, and what's more, if you're to give somebody else a similar set, they're going to come up with a completely different picture in their heads to what you came up with. But that is very much how we understand the world. We just see a few pieces of a vast jigsaw puzzle and we assume that we can figure out the rest from that, and we can't. And well, since blogging and social media became a thing, most of those 35 million voices are now being heard. So that really just adds a lot of confusion to what the hell's going on out there. One of the places that everyone trips up is that facts are not inherently black and white. They're constantly littered with ambiguities, and anybody that tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something. What I mean by that is that what you read in the newspaper is an interpretation of the facts. There are ambiguities that have been removed. There's negative space, things that have not happened, or have not been said, where they're filling in the gaps with assumptions and presenting it to you as fact. But somebody else could look at the exact same facts and come up with a completely different understanding of it. Sometimes a much more reasonable understanding. So, for example, we have recently the great mask debate. Are masks useful for preventing the spread of COVID-19? Well, here we seem to have 2 opposing camps. You have the one camp that says that yes, masks are absolutely essential in the fight against COVID and that everybody should wear them for that reason. And then you have the other camp that say that masks are next to useless and really there's no point anybody wearing them. And both of these seem to be completely contradictory, but both are actually entirely consistent with the source materials, that is the scientists and the doctors and what they've been saying from the outset. If you actually listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying, this becomes very clear. What they have said and continue to say is that if you're infected and you're showing symptoms, then a proper mask, properly handled, can help to prevent the spread of the virus to other people. But if you're not showing symptoms, then there's no need to wear a mask because it won't do you any good. And the long and the short of it is that it's not 100% effective. It's only at best 80% effective at stopping the spread. And that's with a proper surgical mask. If you've just got a bandana wrapped around your mouth, then that's about 5% effective. In other words, it's next to useless. So if you think that wearing a mask is going to keep anybody safe, then you really should stay at home because that's the most effective way to deal with it. So you can see that this is actually consistent with both interpretations. Let's take another example, a recent study that was performed here. There was a one-day conference with 30 attendees. One of them had tested positive for COVID-19, was showing symptoms, and everybody wore masks all day. At the end of the day, 10 people had been infected, but out of those only one went on to show symptoms. Now, on the news programs, they were interpreting that to say that the masks were clearly providing some kind of protection, maybe shielding the immune system, which is why only one of the people infected ended up showing symptoms. And so therefore that's an argument for masks. But the way that I interpreted it was that everybody was wearing masks and he still managed to infect 10 people. Let's take the alternative scenario that the person showing symptoms did what he should have done and stayed home, and then everybody else behaved as normally without masks. How many infections would there have been? None. And it's, this doesn't just apply to things like this. It applies to just about everything. Everything is a matter of interpretation and perspective. Always look for the ambiguity. Always look for the negative space, what is and isn't being said. And once you start getting into that habit, you start to see the world in a very different way.